Chains on humanity. The air inside the mines was always thick with dust, a choking reminder that humans were no longer masters of their own world. Captain Elias Ward, once an officer of Earth's Terran Defense Fleet, now swung a pickaxe against a wall of black stone. His uniform had been replaced by the gray rags of a slave, his rank stripped, his pride buried beneath centuries of Dominion rule. The Falcao Dominion had conquered Earth 2 generations ago. At first, they promised protection and advancement into the galactic community. That illusion lasted only months before their warships turned cities into rubble, and their soldiers rounded up survivors like cattle. Since then, humanity had been scattered across mining colonies and factories, their histories erased, their names reduced to numbers. Elias was Labor Unit 47-19 Carrix now, just another cog in the Dominion machine. He drove the pickaxe into the wall again, letting the vibration run through his arms. Around him, other humans worked in silence, too beaten down to speak. The Dominion overseers patrolled above the pits, insectoid silhouettes with electric whips crackling at their sides. Talking meant lashes. Disobedience meant execution. Hope, Elias had learned, was more dangerous than either. But hope had a way of finding cracks, even in the strongest chains. During a rest cycle, Elias sat against the cavern wall, gulping down stale water. That was when he noticed the young miner beside him. The man's hands were rough, his face smeared with soot, but his eyes burned with something Elias hadn't seen in years: defiance. "You were Fleet, weren't you?" the man asked quietly, glancing up at the overseers to make sure they weren't listening. Elias stiffened. "I don't know what you're talking about." The man leaned closer. "Name's Yerrick. I've heard stories about you. Captain Ward, hero of Titan's last stand. They said you crippled a Dominion cruiser with nothing but a half-dead gunship." Elias's jaw tightened. Titan's last stand was decades behind him, another life. "Stories don't mean much now," he muttered. "We're all slaves here." "Not all of us," Yerrick whispered. He slipped something from beneath his tunic, a shard of alien metal, unmistakably Dominion technology. "There are people working in the shadows. People who believe humanity can rise again. We've been watching you." Elias froze. The very idea was suicide. Rebellion was crushed before it could spark. Entire settlements had been wiped from existence for less. And yet, staring at that fragment of stolen tech, he felt the old fire stir inside him. For the first time in years, the chains around his heart loosened just enough for him to breathe. Before he could reply, a Dominion overseer screeched from above. The whip cracked, scattering the workers back to their stations. Yerrick stuffed the shard away, but not before Elias made a choice. That night, as the miners were herded back into their cages, Elias whispered through the bars of his cell, "Where do I find your people?" Yerrick's eyes gleamed in the darkness. "Beneath the ashes of terror. We've been waiting for someone like you." Elias lay back against the cold wall. For years he had believed humanity broken beyond repair. But if Yerrick was telling the truth, then somewhere in the galaxy, embers still burned. Embers that could ignite a fire powerful enough to shake the stars. And Elias Ward was done living in chains. Sparks of defiance. Elias had imagined rebellion as whispers and rumors, scattered sparks quickly snuffed out by the Dominion. What he found instead was fire. Yerrick smuggled him from the mines under the cover of a shift transfer, through ventilation shafts and forgotten tunnels, until they emerged in a cavern that pulsed with stolen light. Dozens of humans moved about in purposeful silence, repairing weapons, welding armor plates, decoding alien data chips. Elias blinked at the sight. After years of submission and silence, here were his people, organizing, building, preparing. A tall woman with streaks of gray in her dark hair approached. She carried herself with the quiet authority of someone who had led before. "Captain Ward," she said, not asking but stating, "I am Dr. Marissa Cole. Welcome to the Ashes of Terror." Elias studied her. He remembered her name from Earth Science Councils before the fall. "You're supposed to be dead." A faint smile touched her lips. "So are you. We've made a habit of disappointing the Dominion." They led him deeper into the cavern where the heart of the rebellion beat. Elias saw plasma rifles being refitted with human modifications, Dominion drones stripped and rebuilt to answer human commands. Scattered among the workers were maps of mining colonies, Dominion patrol routes, and encrypted comms channels. These people, Elias murmured, they're engineers, miners, farmers, not soldiers. They don't need to be soldiers, Marissa replied firmly. They need to be human, and humanity is resourceful enough to turn rocks into weapons. That night, Elias was brought into their circle. He met Sergeant Kane Rourke, a broad-shouldered veteran with scars carved deep into his arms from Dominion whips. Kane commanded the fighters, the ones who carried out raids on supply depots and ambushed Dominion patrols. He also met Asher Endur, once a diplomat on Earth, now the voice of unity among scattered cells. Where others might see weakness in humanity's diversity, she saw strength. 4 weeks Elias trained with them, his military experience filling the gaps their courage alone could not. He taught formations, ambush strategies, how to strike not where the enemy was strong but where they were blind. Their first mission together was an assault on a Dominion armory. It was madness. The armory was guarded by twice their number, but Kane argued the weapons stockpile inside could arm hundreds more rebels. Elias led the strike team. They moved under the cover of darkness, scaling ridges and slipping past patrol drones. When the first shot rang out, chaos exploded. The rebels fought not with discipline but with fury, using traps, improvised explosives, and raw unpredictability. Dominion soldiers fired in strict formations, but Elias's people melted into the shadows, striking from angles no military textbook could predict. By dawn, the armory was theirs. Elias stood among the stolen rifles and crates of explosives, his chest heaving. Around him, rebels laughed, wept, and embraced, tasting victory for the first time in centuries. For every life lost, 10 more would rise, armed and unafraid. When news of the raid spread, the Dominion answered with fire. Entire settlements were wiped out in retaliation. But instead of silence, the galaxy heard something new, an echo of resistance. The overseers called humans dangerous. For the first time, Elias believed they were right. Fire across the stars. The raid on the armory was supposed to be a small victory, a ripple soon drowned by the Dominion's tide. Instead, it became a signal. Across mining colonies and labor camps, whispers spread of humans who had defied their masters and won. Those whispers turned into sparks, and soon the sparks set worlds aflame. Elias found himself at the center of something larger than he ever imagined. The ashes of terror grew from a hidden cell into a movement spanning half a dozen star systems. Smugglers ferried supplies. Miners sabotaged Dominion machinery. Even children carried messages between safe houses, slipping past alien patrols with fearless defiance. For every execution the Dominion staged, 3 more uprisings erupted. The chains were breaking, link by link. In a stolen chamber beneath the industrial spires of Velcara Prime, Elias stood with Marissa, Kane, and Asher over a flickering holomap. Red Dominion patrols blinked across the display like bloodstains. Green markers, human cells, were multiplying faster than they could be tracked. "They're angry," Kane said, his fists clenched. "But anger isn't enough. If we don't unite them, they'll burn bright and die quick. That's why we're here," Escher countered. "We give them more than anger. We give them purpose." Elias studied the map. For weeks he had watched ordinary people fight like veterans, turning tools into weapons, instinct into strategy. Humanity's unpredictability was their greatest weapon, and the Dominion had no defense against it. Their next mission was bold beyond reason: capture a Dominion warship. It should have been impossible. Dominion vessels were fortresses of steel and fire, crewed by hundreds, commanded by officers bred for war. But Marissa had spent months unraveling the secrets of their Starship AI. She believed she could slip through its defenses long enough for humans to seize control. On the night of the assault, the rebels struck like wolves. A diversionary force hit the orbital station above Velcara, drawing away patrol craft. Meanwhile, Elias led a boarding party in a patchwork freighter with engines barely holding together. The Dominion frigate loomed ahead, bristling with cannons. Alarm sirens wailed as the freighter smashed against its hull, cutting torches igniting. Kane roared as he led the charge, plasma fire tearing through the corridors. Rebels fought with desperation, moving fast, striking faster. For every human who fell, another surged forward, eyes blazing with fury. Marissa's voice crackled over comms. "I'm in. Their AI is blind." Elias pushed deeper, heart pounding. The bridge fell under rebel hands in a storm of fire and steel. When the Dominion captain lay dead at his feet, Elias sat in the command chair. The screens lit up with stars, and for the first time in centuries, a warship bore not the banner of the Dominion but the rising symbol of humanity. They named her Free Earth. The victory sent shockwaves through the galaxy. Other enslaved species began to stir, emboldened by humanity's defiance. The Dominion Council, once smug in their supremacy, now spoke of humans as a contagion spreading through their empire. Elias looked out at the stars from the bridge of the Free Earth. The rebellion was no longer a whisper. It was a fire, and it was spreading. The rebellion that shook the galaxy. The Dominion had underestimated humanity for the last time. From the bridge of the Free Earth, Elias watched the holomap blaze with activity. Hundreds of green signals, human vessels, stolen or cobbled together from scrap, were converging with allies across the sector. For the first time in history, slaves and outcasts stood united. They were farmers in retrofitted freighters, miners flying armored shuttles, alien defectors steering rusted cruisers. Against the Dominion's pristine armadas, they looked fragile, but Elias knew better. Fragile things, when sharp enough, could cut deep. The target was a Dominion's capital system, Jareth Prime, heart of their empire. Strike here, and every world in the Dominion would feel the tremor. On the eve of battle, the rebels gathered. Kane strapped his scarred armor tighter, grinning like a man who had already accepted his fate. Asha gave a speech to the fleet, her voice broadcast across ships patched together with stolen transmitters. "Tonight, we fight not just for humanity, but for every soul that has known chains. If we fall free." The battle began as the rebel fleet tore out of hyperspace. The Dominion Armada was waiting, towering dreadnoughts, swarms of drones, lines of disciplined fire. Against them surged the chaos of rebellion. Ships darted in wild maneuvers, ignoring formations, crashing into enemy hulls just to buy seconds for their comrades. On the Free Earth, Elias commanded with instinct, not doctrine. Flank wide, break their formation, hit them where they least expect. His fleet obeyed with reckless brilliance, weaving through enemy fire like predators smelling blood. The turning point came when Marissa unleashed her weapon. From deep within the Free Earth systems, she deployed the virus she had crafted from stolen Dominion code. Across the battlefield, enemy ships flickered. Drones spun aimlessly. Warships went dark, their cannons silenced mid-barrage. Panic rippled through the Dominion ranks. Elias seized the moment. All units, push forward. The rebels surged like a tidal wave, overwhelming ships that had once been invincible. Kane led the ground assault on Jareth Prime itself, storming the citadel with a battalion of humans and alien allies. Plasma fire lit the streets. Statues of Dominion rulers toppled under the fury of the oppressed. On the citadel steps, Kane fell, struck down by a Dominion officer's blade. But his last cry of defiance carried through the comms, echoing in every rebel's heart, "We are free." By dusk, the Dominion Emperor was dragged from his throne. Across the galaxy, slave registers were burned, chains shattered, overseers slain. The empire that had ruled for millennia crumbled in a single storm of rebellion. In the aftermath, Elias stood with Asher and Marissa on the balcony of the captured citadel. Fires burned in the city below, not of destruction but of celebration. Alien voices rose in song alongside human cheers. "The Dominion will never forget this day," Asher said softly. "No," Elias replied, his gaze fixed on the stars. "The galaxy will never forget." Because humanity had not just risen, they had shaken the very foundations of the galaxy. And in their victory, the oppressed had found the courage to rise as well. For the first time in centuries, the night sky belonged to the free.